My wedding dress felt like a cage. My heart pounded in my ears, a frantic drum against the silence outside. Where the happy honk of a limousine should have been, there was nothing. Just the quiet street, the nervous rustle of my bridesmaids, and the slow, ugly smile creeping across my sister's face. My name is Sharon Austin, and I'm 28 years old. All my life, I've been the quiet one. The one who worked hard, saved her money, and never asked for much. Today was supposed to be my one perfect day, the day I married the love of my life, Mark. But my older sister, Brenda, stood by the window, twisting a piece of her perfect blonde hair. "I just don't understand it," she said, her voice dripping with fake worry. "I called them a dozen times to confirm. They promised they would be here." She looked at me, her eyes wide with false sympathy. My stomach dropped. I had trusted her with one thing. One simple thing. She insisted on booking the limo as her wedding gift to me. "Don't you worry your pretty little head, sis," she had said with a wink. "It's all taken care of." Now, her gift was a gaping hole in my wedding day. My mother started to cry, wringing her hands as she paced the living room. "What are we going to do? You can't be late, Sharon. It's bad luck." My father was on the phone, his face turning red as he yelled at some poor, confused limo company that had no record of our booking. Through it all, Brenda just watched me. She thought she was watching me break. She thought she had finally won, finally proven that my life, my happiness, was just a game she could ruin whenever she wanted. I saw the tiny glint of victory in her eyes before she hid it behind fake tears. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "Sharon, honey, are you okay? The guests are all here. You're running a little late." My voice was a small, broken whisper. "Brenda, she forgot to book the limo." "Mark, there's no car." A pause on the other end of the line. I could picture his handsome face, creased with confusion and worry. He knew how much Brenda enjoyed tormenting me. He knew this wasn't just a mistake. This was an attack. My dream was turning into my worst nightmare, all because of my own flesh and blood. My world was falling apart, and my own sister was the one who pushed it. If you have ever felt the sting of betrayal from someone you were supposed to trust with your life, please, I am begging you with all my heart, subscribe to my story. Your support will give me the strength to go on. And please, if you can, comment with the city or country you're watching from. I truly believe that when we share our pain, we attract healing. I pray that a blessing of true, unbreakable family loyalty finds its way to your home this week. You deserve it. Then, Mark's voice came back through the phone, low and dangerously calm. "She forgot." "Sharon, what was the name of the limo company she said she booked?" The air in the room suddenly felt cold. "Why?" I asked. "Because," he said, and I could hear the click of a keyboard in the background, "I just pulled up the records for every limo service in this city." My heart hammered against my ribs. I held the phone to my ear, my eyes locked on my sister. "Mark wants to know the name of the company, Brenda." Her face, which had been a perfect mask of concern, flickered. For the first time all day, she looked genuinely scared. She started to stutter, a thing she only did when she was caught in a lie. "Oh goodness, I don't remember. It was on a notepad. I must have lost it." She looked at our mom, her eyes pleading for help. It was a small company, really sweet people. The lie was so big, it filled the entire room. That's when Mark's voice cut through the phone, cold and sharp like broken glass. "That's strange. Because there's no record of a wedding pickup for a Sharon Austin anywhere in this city. Not with any company." I checked. The room went silent. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. My mind flew back a year, to the night I told Brenda I was engaged. She hugged me, but it felt like a cage. She whispered, "I am so happy for you," but her eyes, looking over my shoulder, were like two chips of ice. I knew then, but I didn't want to believe it. I had spent my whole life wanting her to love me. When we were little, She would break my toys and tell our parents I did it. As teenagers, she would tell my crushes I had a weird disease. I always forgave her, thinking one day she would finally see me as her sister. Back in the present, my dad sighed, putting his phone down. Nothing. Not a single car for hire is available. Brenda rushed to my side, grabbing my hands. Her touch felt like spiders. We'll have to postpone, Sharon, she said, her voice filled with fake sadness. It's the only way. Postpone my wedding? Let her erase my perfect day? A fire I never knew I had roared to life inside my chest. All the years of her little cruelties, her secret smiles, her fake apologies, it all came rushing back. I looked at my reflection, at the bride she tried to break. I pulled my hands away from hers. My voice came out strong, filling the quiet room. No. Everyone stared at me. We are not postponing anything. I am getting married to Mark today. Nothing you do, I said, looking straight into Brenda's shocked eyes, will ever stop that. Hope was almost gone, but then Mark's voice came through the phone, steady and calm. Sharon, listen to me. I have a plan. It's a bit wild, but I think it will work. A plan. What could he possibly do? He was miles away, waiting for a bride who had no way to get to him. Then he said 7 words that made the world stop spinning. Honey, look out your window right now. My breath caught in my throat. I walked slowly to the window, my white dress rustling around me, and looked down at the street below. And then I saw it. Turning the corner wasn't just a limo. It was 3. 3 of the longest, shiniest, most beautiful white cars I had ever seen in my life. They moved down my quiet little street like giant white swans, silent and graceful, their windows tinted so dark you couldn't see inside. One by one, they pulled up directly in front of my house, parking in a perfect line. The engine of the first car hummed so quietly it was like a whisper. Neighbors started peeking out of their windows, their mouths wide open. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Brenda's face turned the color of chalk. The fake sadness was gone, replaced by pure, ugly confusion. She looked from the impossible fleet of cars to me, then back again. What is this? She whispered, her voice trembling. Who sent these? That's when I finally understood she truly had no idea. Mark's voice, now warm and full of love, came through the phone. They're for you, my love. All of them. As he spoke, the doors of all 3 cars opened at once. 3 drivers in perfect black suits stepped out and stood at attention, waiting. It was a scene from a fairy tale. Mark, I breathed into the phone, my own voice shaking now, but with shock and joy, not sadness. How did you do this? I don't understand. Dad said there were no cars available in the whole city. This was the question that hung in the air, the mystery that made no sense. He let out a soft laugh, a sound that wrapped around me like a warm blanket. Honey, there were no cars available to rent. He paused for a second, letting his words sink in. But the owner can always take his own cars out for a drive whenever he wants. The owner. My mind raced, trying to catch up. Mark always told me he ran his family's business. I pictured a small garage, maybe a little office. He was always so humble, so quiet about his work. He wanted me to love him for his heart, not for what he had. And in that 1 second, the entire world shifted. My Mark, the man who wore silly Christmas sweaters and made me laugh until I cried, didn't just work for a limo company. He owned it. He owned citywide luxury transit, the biggest, most expensive car service in the entire state. I turned from the window and looked straight at my sister. The shock on her face was my first wedding gift. I felt a real smile spread across my face, the first one all day. Brenda, I said, my voice as sweet as sugar. It looks like my ride is here. I started walking towards the front door, my beautiful dress swishing behind me. My parents, tears of joy in their eyes now, rushed to join me. At the doorway, I stopped and looked back at Brenda, still frozen in the living room. Oh, I said softly. One small problem. There's no room for you. Brenda's mouth fell open. For a moment, no sound came out. But I'm your maid of honor, she finally stammered, as if that title was a magic key that could unlock any door. She truly believed she had the right to stand beside me after trying to tear me down. My mother, bless her heart, rushed forward to fix things. Sharon, what are you saying? Don't be silly, honey. Of course there's room. She looked back and forth between us, her face a mess of confusion. She couldn't understand that this wasn't an argument. It was a final judgment. I looked at my mom, my voice soft but firm, so she would know this was not up for debate. No, Mom. There is no room for someone who deliberately tried to ruin my wedding. There is no room for that kind of hate today. The words hung in the air, heavy and true. My whole life, I had eaten Brenda's poison with a smile to keep the peace. The lost concert tickets, the accidental rumors she spread about me in high school. I always forgave, always forgot. But I realized now, I wasn't keeping the peace. I was just letting her win. I turned to my real friends, my true bridesmaids. Jessica, Sarah, you're in the first car with me. Mom, Dad, the second one is for you. For the first time in my life, I was the one in charge of my own story, and it felt like breathing after being underwater. Brenda's face twisted into an ugly mask of rage. You can't do this to me, she shrieked, her voice cracking. I'll call a cab. I'll get there and tell everyone what a cruel monster you are. Her threat was empty. The monster had already shown its face, and it wasn't mine. I almost felt pity for her. Go ahead, Brenda. Try, I said calmly. But by the time anyone gets here to pick you up, the ceremony will be over. The truth of her situation finally hit her. She was stranded, left behind in the ruins of her own evil plan. Without another word, I walked out the front door and into the beautiful, sunny day. The driver held the door for me, and as I slid onto the cool leather seat, I felt the weight of my sister's jealousy finally lift off my shoulders. I was free. As the limo pulled away, I glanced back. Brenda was on the porch, screaming. My father, sitting beside me, sighed. This was the right thing to do, Sharon, he said, his voice heavy with sadness. But I'm worried this is only the beginning of her fight. Just as he spoke, my phone buzzed. It was a text message from a number I didn't know. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a photo of Mark, standing outside the church. He was talking to a woman I knew. It was Brenda's best friend. My blood ran cold. The photo on my phone wasn't just a picture. It was a threat. It was Brenda's best friend, Tiffany, standing way too close to Mark. Her head was tilted, her expression serious, and she was showing him something on her own phone. My perfect day was under attack again. Panic, cold and sharp, stabbed me in the chest. This was Brenda's next move. She couldn't stop me from getting to the church, so she sent her messenger ahead to poison Mark's mind. Sharon, what is it? My dad asked, seeing the color drain from my face. I couldn't find my voice. I just showed him the screen. My dad's jaw tightened. Poison, he muttered, looking at the picture of Tiffany. She's just like her friend. He quickly took my phone and dialed Mark's number. My heart sank with every ring. It went straight to voicemail. Mark wasn't answering his phone. 1,000 terrible questions exploded in my mind. He loves you, Sharon. Don't let her get in your head, my friend Sarah said from across the seat. But she didn't know Tiffany like I did. Tiffany and Brenda were a team. Their cruelty was a game they played together, and I was always the prize they tried to break. I remembered my high school graduation party. Brenda had Tiffany call my date's mom, pretending to be me, and say horrible things. He never spoke to me again. They laughed about it for weeks. To them, my tears were just part of the fun. They were capable of anything. The limo ride, inside a car bigger than my first apartment, felt like being trapped in a tiny box. Every stoplight felt like an hour. Was I driving toward my future or toward the worst heartbreak of my life? What if Tiffany's lies had worked? What if I got to the church and Mark was gone? I squeezed the bouquet of roses in my lap, and a sharp thorn pricked my thumb. A tiny red drop of blood fell onto the perfect white fabric of my dress. It was so small, but it felt like a terrible sign, a warning that something was about to be broken. When we finally arrived at the church, my heart was a painful lump in my throat. I could see the guests milling about on the steps, but I couldn't see Mark. I couldn't see Tiffany. The not knowing was the worst kind of torture. My perfect day was hanging by a single, thin thread. The driver opened my door. "Whatever happens in there," my dad said, taking my arm, "we face it together." I took one shaky breath. The beautiful sound of the church bells started to ring. It was time. I was ready to fight for my love, for my future. But as I took my first step, a man in a dark security uniform stepped directly in front of me, blocking the path to the church doors. He looked at me with sad eyes. "Ma'am, I'm very sorry," he said, his voice low and serious. "But you can't go in there right now." "What do you mean I can't come in?" The words tumbled out of my mouth, high and shaky. "This is my wedding." My mind spun. Was this Brenda's final, twisted joke? Had she paid this man to stand here and humiliate me in front of all my guests? My father stepped in front of me, his voice a low growl. "Son, you need to get out of my daughter's way right now." The guard didn't flinch. He was built like a stone wall, and his expression was serious and calm. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I can't do that." My blood ran cold when he spoke again. "My orders are directly from Mr. Thompson," he said politely. "He asked me to have you wait here for just a moment. He's dealing with a situation inside." Mark. My Mark had ordered this man to keep me out of my own wedding? My knees felt like they might give way. A situation. The word echoed in my head. It had to be Tiffany. I pictured her inside the beautiful church, screaming horrible lies about me, poisoning the one perfect thing in my life. I imagined Mark's face, confused and hurt by her words. I could feel the stares of 100 guests on my back. They were whispering, pointing. The bride was here, but the door was closed to her. This was a nightmare. This was the exact public shame my sister had always dreamed of causing me. I was a laughingstock on my own wedding day. Then, the huge church doors creaked open. But it wasn't Mark. It was Tiffany. And she wasn't smiling. Her face was a mess of tears and smeared makeup. She was sobbing, great, gulping breaths, as a second security guard led her firmly by the arm down a side path. She didn't even look at me as she passed. The woman who had walked in minutes before, ready to destroy my life, now looked completely and utterly defeated. What could Mark have possibly said or done to her to make her break down like that? It was a side of him I had never seen. My gentle Mark, the man who would catch spiders and release them outside, had somehow created this scene. He had protected me, even when I wasn't there. He was stronger than I ever knew. He was a lion, and I had only ever seen the lamb. The first guard finally gave me a small nod and stepped aside. "You can go in now, Mrs. Thompson-to-be. He's waiting for you." My dad squeezed my arm tightly. The organ music suddenly swelled from inside the church, and we began to walk toward the light. I took one final, shaky breath and stepped over the threshold. Every head in the church turned towards me. And there, at the end of the long, beautiful aisle, stood my Mark. He was smiling. But standing right beside him, where my maid of honor was supposed to be, was a uniformed police officer. My feet felt like they were moving through wet cement. The organ music was a distant buzz in my ears. All I could see were two people at the end of the aisle, the man I loved more than life itself, and a police officer who had no place in my perfect dream. As my father walked me closer, I saw Mark's face. He wasn't scared. He looked strong, his eyes burning with a protective fire meant only for me. He saw the fear in my eyes and gave me the smallest, secret wink. It was a promise. "I have this. Trust me. When my dad placed my hand in his, Mark squeezed it tight. He leaned in close, his lips brushing my ear. I'm sorry about this, my love, he whispered. We just had to take out the trash first. The trash. He meant Tiffany. But what had she done to deserve a police officer? The minister began to speak, but the words were just sounds. My mind was screaming with questions. I kept stealing glances at the officer. He stood at attention, his face like stone, holding a small notepad. He wasn't watching us. His eyes were slowly moving over the faces of my guests. What could Tiffany have possibly done? My mind flashed back to the photo of her showing Mark her phone. It must have been more than just lies. It had to be something worse. A threat. Blackmail. What secret could she possibly have that was so powerful? My sister's games had suddenly become very dangerous. I was so lost in my thoughts, I almost missed my cue. I do, I whispered, my voice barely working. Then it was Mark's turn. His voice was loud and clear, filling the entire church. He promised to love and honor me, to be my partner and my protector. As he said the word protector, the police officer began to move. He walked silently down the side aisle, his gaze never wavering from the pews. My heart pounded against my ribs. He wasn't just here for show. He was actively looking for someone. But who? Brenda wasn't here. Mark kissed me, and the world came rushing back into focus. We were married. We had won. The guests were on their feet, clapping and cheering. As he pulled away from the kiss, Mark whispered, "Now for the real wedding gift. It's waiting for your sister when she gets home." We turned and walked down the aisle, hand in hand, husband and wife. Happiness washed over me, so pure and bright. But as we passed the very last row, I saw him. The police officer had stopped. He was standing next to a guest. He was standing next to Brenda's husband, Ben. Ben's face was as pale as a ghost. The officer said something quietly to him, and Ben slowly stood up, his whole body trembling. The officer placed a hand on his shoulder, not unkindly, and began leading him towards a side exit, away from the cheering crowd. We walked out of the church into a shower of rice and sunlight. For a moment, it was perfect. But as I looked at my handsome new husband, I saw a stranger. A man who commanded security guards and spoke to police officers. A man who had just had my brother-in-law arrested. At the reception, the music played and our families celebrated. Mark took me in his arms for our first dance. As he held me close, I rested my head against his chest and whispered the question that was screaming in my mind. "Mark, tell me everything. Why did the police take Ben?" He held me even tighter, as if to protect me from the words he was about to say. "It wasn't just Tiffany, Sharon," he said, his voice quiet and serious. "Brenda sent her to blackmail me." My heart stopped. Blackmail. What could they possibly have to blackmail him with? "She showed me a video on her phone," Mark continued, his jaw tight with anger. "It was from a hidden camera, filmed last week. It showed a man in a ski mask pouring gasoline all over the floor of my main storage warehouse." My mind flashed with images of fire and twisted metal. "What does that have to do with Ben?" I asked, my voice a frightened whisper. "Tiffany said that unless I left you at the altar, the man in the video would light the match tonight," Mark said. "And our lives would go up in smoke." The threat was so evil, so much bigger than a forgotten limo. My whole body went cold. Who was it? The man in the mask. Mark looked deep into my eyes, and in them I saw a universe of pain for what he had to tell me next. "It was Ben," he said. "Your sister convinced her own husband to try to destroy my entire life's work." Ben. Sweet, quiet Ben? The man who was afraid of spiders and organized his books by color? It didn't make sense. He would never do something so terrible. Not on his own. He must have been a puppet, and my sister Brenda was the one pulling all the strings. It was suddenly so clear. This was never just about a wedding. Brenda didn't just want to spoil my day. She wanted to ruin my entire future. She wanted to destroy the good man I loved, to burn his world to the ground so that I would have nothing left. "He's at the station right now," Mark said gently, as our dance came to an end. "He's telling the police everything. How Brenda threatened him, how she planned it all." Mark then looked at me. "But that police report, that's Ben's problem. My real wedding gift is for her." Just then, my phone vibrated in my little white purse. It was a frantic text from my mother, who had gone home to check on things. It read, "Sharon, call me. Brenda is screaming. There are men here from the bank putting all her furniture on the front lawn." I stared at the text on my phone, then looked at Mark. His face was perfectly calm. He wasn't surprised at all. He simply took a sip of champagne and said, "My gift has been delivered." A cold shiver ran down my spine. "Mark," I whispered, "what did you do?" He led me to a quiet balcony overlooking the reception. "Your sister and her husband were living in a house of cards, Sharon," he said gently. "A huge mortgage, loans for their fancy cars, thousands in credit card debt. They were drowning, and they were pretending to be rich. I always wondered how they afforded their perfect life. Brenda would just wave her hand and say Ben was a genius with money." "How do you know all of this?" I asked. Mark's answer hit me like a tidal wave. "Because the company that owns all their debt," he said, "is mine." He explained that a year ago, his investment firm had bought a package of high-risk loans from a struggling bank. Brenda and Ben's mortgage was in that package. He saw their names and decided to hold on to the file, tucking it away. It was a secret shield he kept, just in case. Just in case my sister decided to be who she truly was. This kind, gentle man I married had been quietly preparing for this exact battle for over a year. He knew Brenda would one day try to destroy me, and he had built a fortress around me without me even knowing. "They have missed their last 3 payments," Mark said, his voice flat, like a doctor giving bad news. "The contract they both signed was very clear. If they did that, the lender has the right to take back everything, immediately." He hadn't just called the police. He was taking away their entire world. I pictured Brenda, standing on her perfectly manicured lawn, watching movers carry out her expensive furniture. The life she had built to make me feel small, the life she showed off to everyone, was being taken apart piece by piece in front of all the neighbors. It was poetic justice. She tried to burn my future to the ground, and in return, Mark was legally erasing her past. He wasn't just playing checkers. He was a chess master, and he had seen all her moves before she even made them. He had been waiting for her to finally knock over the first piece. "She has nothing left," I breathed, feeling a strange mix of shock and victory. "Oh, it gets worse," Mark said, a cold edge to his voice. "Her husband is cooperating with the police, her house is gone, and her bank accounts are about to be frozen." He glanced at his watch. "And in about 2 minutes, the president of her company will get an email." He looked at me, his eyes full of love and protection. "It will have a copy of the police report, explaining how she tried to burn down the business of their #1 client, me." The rest of our wedding day was a dream. With the storm of my sister's hate finally gone, I was free to just be happy. We danced, we ate cake, and we were surrounded by people who truly loved us. Mark had not just saved my wedding, he had saved my life from a shadow that had followed me forever. Weeks later, we came home from our honeymoon to a quiet, peaceful life. We heard from my parents that Brenda's world had completely crumbled. She had lost her job, and her husband, Ben, had taken a plea deal for the arson attempt. Her house of cards had been blown away for good. One afternoon, my mother called me, crying. "It's Brenda," she sobbed. "She has nothing, Sharon. She's living on a friend's couch. She wants to see you. She told me she is so sorry." My mother begged me to give her one last chance, to just hear her out. I didn't want to go. I was done with her lies. But Mark, my wise husband, encouraged me. "You don't have to forgive her," he said softly. But maybe you need to hear her apology so you can finally close that door forever. So I agreed to meet her. We met at a cheap coffee shop. She looked like a ghost. Her fancy clothes were gone, her hair was a mess, and her eyes were empty. She looked broken, and for a second, I almost felt a sting of pity. She cried and said all the right words. "I was always so jealous of you," she sobbed. "You were always so good and happy, and I was empty." She told me she was sorry for everything. Then, she asked the question, "Can you help me? Maybe ask Mark to stop? To give me my house back?" And in that moment, I saw it. A tiny flicker of calculation in her tear-filled eyes. The same look she'd had on my wedding morning. She wasn't sorry for the pain she caused. She was just sorry she had lost the game. She was already planning her next move. I stood up from the table, my heart calm and steady for the first time in my life. "No, Brenda," I said, my voice clear and strong. I placed a $20 bill on the table for her coffee. "I can't help you. Goodbye." I walked out of that diner and didn't look back. I left her there with her lies and her emptiness. Mark was waiting in the car. He took my hand. "Are you okay?" he asked. I smiled, a real, true smile. My real revenge wasn't taking her house or her job. My real revenge was finally being free of her. It was choosing to be happy. My story began with a wedding my sister tried to ruin, but it ends with a life she can never touch. If you believe that truth is the most powerful weapon, please like this video and share it with anyone who needs the strength to walk away. And please, subscribe for more stories that prove that a good heart always wins.